Hi guys, this is Arda and this is my good friend Matt. Welcome to our podcast, Yes and No. This is our last episode of the season. We're planning to do our second season soon, but we're going to give some break and we're going to talk about it today a little bit. This is something that we recently decided. I think we did good, no? Like this first season, 10 episodes, I think we did a good job with all the system that we came up with, the logo, the structure. What's your take on it?
Hi, I'm here.
Matt is here too, by the way.
Yeah, I'm here. That was a good, interesting experience for sure. In the first episode, we discussed about why we wanted to do that podcast in some way, and then we kind of reflected on the other podcast series. But in terms of how we started, and especially because we're living on the opposite side of the globe, and what we wanted to achieve, and the fact we worked on some clips, we did some logo, I created the music intro, and then how we organized ourselves, it was something.
I mean, technical stuff was hard too. It took us some time.
It is so difficult, guys.
Like first 3-5 episodes, we trying to figure out the mechanical things, more than the podcast itself.
Yeah, because it feels like everybody has a podcast, all right? But to kind of create some quality, I'm not saying quality content, but I'd like just at least, as the
visually
sound
and
visually, and sure that the cameras are working and internet doesn't lag and things like that. It's more complicated Sims and that looks so. Yeah, it was a journey for sure. Yeah,
and I think where we are right now is good because we always initially wanted to bring other people to either our friends or a guest, someone who is an expert in a topic. And then when you bring those people, I think you need to have the whole setup ready to go or need to communicate them so they don't have hard time.
Yeah.
And I think we are at a good place with that.
Yeah.
I think.
We're ready for the next phase, basically.
Yeah.
So this is our last episode for this season.
Yeah, we're not leaving, guys. We're gonna continue.
Not leaving. We're still gonna bore you.
We're gonna keep doing this.
We're still gonna do it anyway. So if it's not recorded, we're still gonna call each other and then be annoying.
What you guys think about it?
No, we love you. Thank you. All right,
we love you. Sorry,
don't say that.
Sorry.
Yeah. Right. But we're still gonna call each other hours long every day, so that's still not gonna change. But no, the idea is basically we reflected on what we learned this season, and we decided to take a break to restructure a little bit more of what we want to achieve next season, which hopefully is gonna be back in September. So it's not that far away. It's not in a year or so.
Yeah.
But with the new format, because we had some feedback from you guys that are saying that we're talking too much, it's too long. So it feels like even though some people are in LA stuck in traffic, the traffic is not long enough for them to hear the full podcast episode. So we're going to shorten that. And
what were 30, 45 minutes? That was the thing?
45 to
45
an hour
is good.
Top.
Right.
I'm not, we're trying
30
to
minutes
be concise.
is too short.
Yeah, for us, it's impossible. I think it's already 20 minutes since we started. But yeah, the idea is this, and then try to bring more topic at the same time. For us, really the idea was to
talk about just one topic.
Yeah, one topic, having this conversation about, society in general and how we evolve in the world. And sometimes we had to restrain ourselves talking about some live topics, if I would say, because we were recording a little bit further ahead sometimes. And then sometimes it felt like some topics were not even compatible. So we were like, shit. So we have a huge list of things we still want to talk about. And I think we can maybe connect some of those topics together. And also, as Arda was saying, bring some experts and more guests into the show like we did with Meshu.
And we watch some other podcasts too, and one of the successful ones, they are also, those topics are spreaded, like they don't always talk about just one topic, and they talk about random things. But when there are three people, for example, I talk about something for a few minutes, and then you mention that Trump got shot from the ear or something, and then like it keeps going, like
Yeah, definitely. And then
not
you
that
can
we're
go
gonna
from-
talk about that, but
No, we're not.
like,
you see, like
just
we're
an
not,
example.
It's just an example, all right? But
Yeah.
we're not going to talk about that obviously today.
No,
but
not
that's
gonna talk
something
about
that
that.
we want to do basically and bring a little bit more news event topics sometimes, because I think they're still related to the subject that we've been through about masculinity, about traveling, about entertainment in general. And I think those subjects are basically always relevant, and there's always news about those. And I think we can see some evolution. I really think the start of our conversation here and this idea of our podcast, Yes and No, is really this idea of sometimes we're seeing something and then we wanted to talk about it. And it was this analyze of what's going on in the world in terms of how the society functioned and our philosophy behind it and why it was interesting at that point in time. But even today, it feels like sometimes the news is moving so fast that even society is evolving really fast. And we definitely need to connect some of that almost like in life, I would say.
Dude, I was thinking about this recently, that we are seeing so much change. We might be the generation that for the first time exposed to the change is so fast. Like we had internet, we had AI now, we had technological advancements in like electric cars and different tools. And it's just like a lot of things happening in the 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
Like I'm 35, past 20 years, like so many things happen, so many things change. It's not how it was, I think.
No, it's
Before.
not. And I mean, it was. I think, everybody's going to say
I
the
think
same
it was
thing.
slower. I think it's slowly
It was a little
faster.
bit slower for sure. And then
Yeah.
there was like this huge expansion maybe in the 80s for sure, 100%. But I think we're like even the way we perceive society and other people and social media, like that changed everything. So even though maybe back then, it was easier to get access to some product and some new things or blah, 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 some stuff in general, like here was just about the news and also what people are doing, their image. And I think there's a lot of work in terms of psychology too. I think back then, people, I don't think they were reflecting a lot about themselves, their place in society, and their place in their relationship, their place in their friend group or everything. And I think this is on top of everything you mentioned already. And I think that's, for me, that's, yeah, sure, there's AI, there's definitely technology that evolved it. Like even 10 years, we couldn't even do what we're doing right now. Like, record ourselves with mic, sure, but like streaming ourselves live, commenting.
Yeah, it's so much more easier than back
you
then.
are over there and I'm
comparison.
here, like there's like 9 hours difference and things. No, impossible. And it is definitely there. But those are tools too. But I think in terms of even society and how we perceive ourselves in this world in general, I think that's changing so fast.
Maybe the next 20, 30 years will be more about that. Because past 5 years, 5 days, what the fuck? Past 5 years, I think I'm more aware of like myself and also these topics like psychological issues that others go, like what neurodivergent is. And these are like subtle things too. It's not like a psychological problem that is too extreme or really you cannot function by yourself. These are like individuals functioning themselves, but their brain works differently, right? And socially, I think how we talked about it and communicated was different. People didn't give a shit that much. And now I think a lot more people talking about it, sharing their experience, finding common things. That's huge. And I think it's going to be more. And the more science happen, right?
And I really think like this is like just to go back to even 4 years ago. It felt like even 10 years ago, like there was no knowledge,
real talk,
or real talk about those psychological issues. I think the pandemic in 2020 and people and the lockdowns and all that things, there's a lot of reflection about people being happy or not, what they want to do and what they achieve, and they put it like everything in perspective, and a lot of people start to learn about themselves, which our parents didn't. And this is even new. That's what I'm saying. Like, it feels like every year there's something else that comes and rise, and then I don't know, you discover something, and the year after that something else. Like, one of the things that I like to say, and that's fucked up. Like, it felt like I turned 40 last year. This year, whatever.
What?
I know.
You were 40 years old?
Yeah, you see? No Botox, nothing, guys. But it felt like when I was going to turn 30, like, oh, I'm going to be super old. But I figured everything out, like I had like this crazy life already. I had like so many things by 30. But I was like, yeah, I know everything. It's good. And then bam, smack in your fucking face, and you're like 40, and then you're like, fuck, no, I don't know shit actually, but don't know shit at all. Like, and that's, for me, that was the craziest part of all of that, is like COVID, like, put everything back in perspective for me, and even my vision of the world, and everything that I loved, or everything that I thought that I knew. And I was super grounded into that, like, just shatters, and I had like to rediscover myself psychologically, things that I didn't even know existed. Like we mentioned, like in the last episode about, even through relationship, how people behave, these different type of avoidant personality, secured, and all that. I didn't know shit about that. And then even through that, and even through therapy for the past 4 years, I learned so much about myself and so much about my life actually from 30 years ago. And I don't know, by 30, I felt like I knew everything. I thought it was done, like, hey, chill. But no. And I think that's maybe to go back to what you were saying, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit. You can talk about that too. But I think it's also about, as you were saying, about our neurodivergency. Like, for me, I learned that I had like ADHD and some form
What
of
is
autism.
neurodivergent to you? Can you explain your take on, because maybe there are some people don't really know what neurodivergent is.
Actually, you know what? Let me restart something. Because you cut in me at
this is neurodivergence. This
dude,
is
that's,
what it is.
That's something that
you don't even need to explain anymore.
You stopped me at one point that I was making about a strategist, and then you just cut me like, what is neurodivergence, motherfucker?
That's also neurodivergence. But yeah. I think this, I wanted to mention what neurodivergence is, because when I even tell people, I feel like a good amount of people don't know what neurodivergence is.
Really?
And the best way, I think so, because when I looked up to it and where it's coming from, it's actually almost a group of people who started to realize certain things about themselves, like ADHD, ASD, or like certain neurological developmental issues. When they start to realize these, that they're on the spectrum, it sounds like a sickness or illness, that they don't put themselves into that category. Like when you say this person is ASD or this person has ADHD, they are having some neurological issue, they still can function by themselves. So they don't call it as, I have a sickness or an illness or a disorder.
Handicap,
I'm just neurodivergent. Because when you're not neurodivergent, you're neurotypical, meaning that you're better to understand society and blend into the society without showing any different behavior that some people might point out, like, why is he talking so much? Why are you not listening what I'm saying? Or are you even here? And like the people see you as like, this is your personality, but there's actually something neurological going on that is a part of you. So that's, I think, that group of people started calling themselves like, this is a neurodivergent.
Yeah, I think it was just a medical term, but then it became more mainstream. And I think as you were mentioning, like it felt like for me when I was saying some stuff about autism and or people with ADHD, especially in film, pop culture, or anything, or even with organization, that helps people, it always felt like it was just handicapped people. So some people that are on the spectrum for sure, but which had like a lot of difficulties to be part of society. Like they don't communicate, they don't talk, they don't look at people, they don't understand what's going on, and you have to take care of them a lot. And
yeah,
for
that's
me,
true. I believe that's where it started. Yeah.
and that's the thing. And for me, I was like, yeah, I can feel those people are handicapped for sure. But for me, I felt like I had trouble in school, trouble in life, trouble in so many things, which I was like, I don't know. I don't fit in society, but I don't know why. And never in my head, I was like, yeah, I have the same disorder that those people that are handicapped. And then they had like, need a lot of support. So never about that. And I think there's a lot of people that saw that and they were like, actually, it's more complex than that. And as you were saying, it's a spectrum. And through the spectrum, ADD, ADHD, ASD, and all that, there's people that can fit better in society. They have like definitely tools for them to be part of society, but they're going to still struggle with it, but not at the level as we could imagine before. And I think this idea of neurodiversity really started to catch on at that moment where people being like, okay, I'm not feeling and I'm not working, or I don't have the same normal vision in society as other people. My brain is working differently. I don't adapt to a lot of things, or I'm adapting to stuff differently too. But I don't feel like I'm handicapped either because I can still be part of society. And this is where I think it really became mainstream. But the idea, as you were saying, is really the brain connection. Like the idea of neurodiversity, it's from neurology, right? And it's really how the neurons inside your brain was studies showing that, saying that the connection and the way the information is going through your brain is different than most people.
Yeah. And I had issues in school too. And I think I also have a learning disability that's maybe more leaning into dyslexia, I would say, because I always had this shit with words that like reading, like if I'm in a test and taking a test, I was always leaving the last. And that was so frustrating to me because each question that I needed to understand, and there was something about it that my brain was not fucking processing it. And I need to read it again. And it was just so feels stupid. You know what I mean? But when it comes to math, physics, I was really good. Like give me numbers and I get it. And I get mathematics and physics and geometry. But when it comes to words, there's something about it. And I remember having this conversation with my best friend, and she is a writer and she's a reader too, like reads shitloads of books. And she told me when she was young, like she started to read really early. Like she was looking at paragraphs and quickly understand what that says. And to me, it's a brain thing. It's a neurological thing. I think how your brain processes an abstract concept of like these letters coming together and creating a meaning. And what I know about it is that different parts of your brain communicating when you're reading actually. So I always had that issue. And I never thought I have dyslexia or mild, moderate, whatever. But I always thought something wrong with me, that maybe I'm stupid or some shit and not getting it. And I think that's why it's important to kind of realize those things, to not only communicate to people, but also to feel good about yourself, that there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your brain is communicating differently. If they would teach things differently at school, not just like writing and memorizing, maybe I would learn quicker. But at the end of the day, it's just not knowing doesn't help. These things are actually very relevant.
Yeah, it is. Like, that's the thing. For me, if I'm comparing myself to a lot of friends that I have, it feels like my life was crazy and incredible. But because I did so many things. Like I create a brand of skateboard when I was still in high school, and people are like, yeah, people do that. But then I'd be like, okay, but actually I want to do music. So I started a music label. And then after that, I was like, yeah, music is good, but I'm going to move to the US. I'm going to do something a little bit different. And then I came back to France and I was like, you know what? Fuck that shit. I hate the people that I'm working with, and I'm going to do a fashion photography because I always love that. And I was like, no, actually, yeah, I'm going to change about that. I'm going to create a brand of bicycles. And I was like, yeah, maybe not. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do some fucking bakery or cookies or some shit like that. And I was like, I still want to move back to the US and do some movies at the end of the day. So I'm going to the US doing some fucking movies. Then I'm moving to Tahiti. And then I'm fucking doing a boat tour with I'm importing and designing a boat that I'm importing straight up from China and shit like that. Like I never stopped. So when I'm looking at people that had like this normal, job in an office job and things like that.
You have the skipping project. You get to a point that you're like, okay, I'm fulfilled. I did everything I want to do. What is next? So you also learn quickly, and I think you get like a general grasp of the idea, and you're like, okay, next thing, I want to move on.
Exactly.
I hope it won't happen with the podcast.
I don't know,
but I think it's But wait, it's a part of you.
It is, but like that's one of the things that for me was really struggling, and even though you can say, oh yeah, I know people that are like that, that doesn't mean they are ADHD or they have this or that. Because a lot of, especially therapists, they're not going to try to put a name of what you got because they don't like this idea of putting tags,
labels,
labels to people. But for me, I struggled with all of that. Like I had like recurring depression, really bad depression. I isolated myself. I struggle with a lot of things. And I had to take medication and come out and then go back to it. And that was a struggle for me, which I didn't understand why, because it felt like, I don't know, sometimes life was good because even though I did all of things and I didn't have money for sometimes I was living in there and there and there, it always felt that I always came back to on my feet and I could still achieve a lot of things and I should not be worried or have anxiety about what's coming up in the future because I always help myself through every problem that I had. But unfortunately, my brain was like, no, fuck you, And I think that's where it really started. Like a few years ago, like that really, I've been through things that affected me a lot. And this is where I was like, okay, that is absolutely not normal. And my way of communicating with people and the way I was perceiving myself when I was communicating with people in a social context and the way I was communicating in my relationships, there was something which for me didn't make any fucking sense. And struggling mentally and struggling with this form of stability, but also not understanding like the normality of the way of thinking of other people. Yeah. Even though, like, as I explained last time, I like really good pattern recognition. So I can understand socially what people are doing, what they're doing. But sometimes I don't know what their intentions are. And regarding that, I don't know how to express myself properly. And then it just shatters me completely. I'm like burning out or some shit. And it's only at that moment that I start to realize that, okay, there's maybe something a little bit more complex than that. And I've been through different therapists. One was like, oh, you're high potential. We have like these things which is called high potential intellectual in France, which doesn't really exist in English. But I would say it's kind of a mix, as I said in the previous episode, a mix of autism, high functioning autism and ADHD. So this mix, which basically one means you need something really stable and not be overwhelmed by anything. But at the same time, you are extremely need a lot of things going on in your life and you're overthinking everything and you're moving too much and you're never stopping. And that struggle a lot. And I think, and I'm going to reassure you, bro, why this podcast is still going to run out is because this is something for me. And I think our conversation, and this is why we analyze that you have the problem too. I
do.
have the autism. No, but But for sure, we can talk about neurodivergence and how people connecting to each others, and even that can bring other people with different traumas because the way we function in. Anyway, but even through that, what I'm saying is this podcast for us started because of a conversation. And we needed this conversation because we're definitely trouble to understand the normality of society and the world. So we had to hyper intellectualize everything that we were going through in life. And through that, we had like this huge conversation.
And
for
you
me,
need to talk. I think it's so meditative.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what like it really goes to this idea of this podcast too, is it is something that we still need to do. Like I need that.
For our brains especially. Like a lot of people don't maybe feel about like talking about something, or they don't give a shit. But I grow up in an environment, but also my grandfather, my uncles, they're like that too. Like if you sit down and they start talking with you, it's just a fucking monologue. They just talk. And then you are like, what the fuck is going on right now? They can keep going. And they jump into different topics, right? But in their brain, they're actually sharing something with you. And they're opening up, like oversharing maybe, but they're opening up. They're vulnerable. And they also have this feeling like, let's meet in this same space, right? And it takes me so much time to understand my patterns of talking with other people. Am I talking about myself? Because it's not that good. I do want to hear from you too. I'm interested about you. But then when I get into that mindset, I just keep fucking going. That's, to me, it's very important to not only understand yourself, but communicating with other people too. I think that's what there is like a reaction right now that people, maybe they're a little bit ignorant or not interested. When you start talking about these things, one of the things I keep hearing, and it's a little bit frustrating, but they say, well, everybody's like that. Mm-hmm. I'm like, not really. They're not really. Everybody is like that. And there are like maybe subtleties. And like if you forget something, everybody forgets something. But dude, no, every day I'm forgetting. Like if I don't write things, I'll probably lose shit all the time because I'm so distracted. I can easily distract myself. So I need to use these mechanisms to keep myself focused.
I can testify right now.
Yeah.
Just even 2 days ago, Arda asked me for something, which is, a credential to go on internet on a website. And he asked me like, dude, and I told him like already, like, I can just go back to conversations just like 2 weeks ago. He asked me the same question. So I already like answered to him. But even more than that, we're sharing notes, all right, on the notepad, and
on the
and and it's there. And that guy,
I'm like, where is it? I can't find it.
I cannot find it. Can you send me this?
Give me
or send me that? And I'm like, it's there. It's been there all along. But yeah, it's always like that with him.
And once you know it, I would feel like you would be less frustrated with someone. Like when you know that, okay, like they're like, they're not doing it intentionally to fuck with you.
No.
But yeah. And sometimes hard because people think it's the personality. Like this is their personality. They don't care. They're not paying attention. I'm not paying I can't. It's ADHD means like attention deficit. Yeah. Something is going on in my brain that I'm trying to find mechanisms to keep it together and focus things.
And it's exactly that. And what's funny about this neurodiversity is how diverse it is. Because I have ADHD, as I said, mentioned with the sprinkle of autism.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we don't have the same experience from it.
Yeah.
And I'm on medication for it. And even through my medication, that's not resolving the problem that would maybe resolve yours and things like that. But the way my therapist told me and the way I've been through testing, and it feels like I have more deficiency of attention deficiency, which for me, when I'm looking at you, I want to fucking slap the fuck out of him. Right? Guys, like the other day, I was like, that motherfucker. But yeah, it is still different because for me, it's going to be something a bit different from the day to day. I have so many things in my brain I need to do, which I cannot structure either. and I'm going to lose something, but automatically it's not going to be the same way as you. And that's why it's interesting. And I think it's so difficult for people to understand from afar, because as you said, it feels like it's just your personality. Because that disorder in itself, which, as I said, there's consequences at the end of the day, it's different for every people that are affected by that. And it's different so much that it feels at one point just a question of personality, but it's not. It just literally, the brain works differently. It doesn't mean like everybody that had the brain that works differently works the same way. No, they're still different. And but that's really the idea of why we needed this conversation. I think this is why we connected so much, and we had this podcast today. It's because that's one of the things we actually connected to, maybe in our neurodiversity.
And what's the reason? What's all behind these things happening? It's the capitalism.
Capitalism.
Great segue.
Hey, there you go. Great transition.
I was actually checking yesterday what is this diagnostics and analytics? Like there's like the psychological
DSM-5.
Like it's the fifth edition. Like there are like bunch of things that it says like, all right, you need to, if you're over 5 of these, you're experiencing like daily, then you can, put yourself under that ADHD. But there are different things. And then there's hyperactivity. So you might have some of them. I may have some other things, which creates a different type of brain. And same thing with learning disabilities too. Like there's like mild, moderate, and maybe like more excessive versions of it. So not only that there are different compartments of the brain reacting differently, but also the level of it creates this whole spectrum. That's why it's a spectrum. I think many people, especially neurotypicals, are having a hard time to see that's not like everybody. Or it's like, oh, it's a normal thing. Yeah, you would think it's a normal thing. That's how your brain works. You are normative.
But no, and it's not like that either. Like even for me, it doesn't feel like I've seen the 3 TikToks and I'm like, okay, I'm autist. No, you need to go through testing too. And through my even ADHD diagnostic I had to go back to talk with my family, go to see some videos when I was a child, because it's also something to see how it is today, but also was it related to trauma maybe, some part of it would be maybe just trauma and not like neurodivergence. So I had to go back to how I was acting as a child between 6 and 9 years old. And it's through all of that at one point you can come up with a diagnosis. And then, but before that, I was not even thinking about that either. I was like, okay, I'm seeing the world in a certain way. I'm cool. That's it. But no, I struggle so much. It's so fucking difficult. Yeah, it's not like everybody. And people can fit in society pretty fine for some of them. But some others, even though it looks like it, no. At the end of the day, and this is why we started also those conversations, because it's definitely our brain that wanted to dictate that. But it also goes to what we've been through life. And for my personal experience, as I was saying earlier, and everything that I've been through my work experience, I've been confronted to the reality of money and how people were perceiving me and my family was perceiving me, like seeing me in terms of, oh, you're a failure, or you cannot finish things, or I don't want to hire you because you're going to move there, or you're going to do that, or you're going to stay there. And for me, that affected so many part of my life, as I said, in terms of my relationship, in terms of money, in terms of stability on a daily basis, because even though I didn't know that much about myself, I was still struggling. And when you have like full-on bad depression and you cannot move out of an apartment for months, well, you don't have money. There's like real problems that arise. And the way I started to see the world again, when I understood how my brain was working, I was confronted with the reality of society in general and how it doesn't help at all, and how society expects you. And this is why really we started with those 2 first episode about, okay, why we wanted to do podcast, but also about authenticity. Is like how the pressure society puts you on yourself as even someone that is neurotypical, but for everybody, and especially for neuroatypical or neurodivergent people, how society doesn't give a shit, and how it is a constant struggle to be looked out by people that thinks you're your personality, or you're dumb, or you're not wanting to participate in society normally, and how there's no help either. Either it feels like you need to be kind of handicapped, and then, okay, like we gotta acknowledge that like, you're obviously completely disabled, or be normal. Yeah. And that's the fucked up part. And I think those conversations that we had about authenticity and how we perceive society, and how society expanding so much, and this is what we want to do in the next season, is also how it affects everybody. Because I think for me, it was really a struggle. For you, you have a part where you can integrate yourself a little bit more, and you're more social in some context. I'm not saying that, but it feels like for me, it's been a real struggle, especially for the past few years. Society is putting so much on ourselves. And I know you were mentioning capitalism, because a lot of people are like, what the fuck, capitalism every single time. But it is also about that, for sure, 100%. Is the way society is built and the system that we're living on that doesn't allow us to be ourselves, that also putting too much pressure on ourselves, that creates persona that are not us. Because if you're not creating those persona, you're not part of the mold. And if you're not part of the mold, then you're not normal. If you're not normal, then you're not someone valuable for society. And I think, that's definitely one of the second main arc that we had through our conversation and our episode, through this idea of authenticity, why it is important for us, and also the second one, which is basically how society influenced us and can affect everybody, and how it is really important to go back to who we are.
And I think that's, as you said, it's one of the reasons we talked about capitalism a lot. And I feel like when you're neurodivergent, when you're in that gray area, even when you look at the content creators who are not good at masking to be normative, and they're a little bit off, and they have their own content that they talk about how fucked up capitalism a lot more to a lot more people. And I feel like maybe there is, as you said, since we are having difficult time to fit in socially, and we live in a world that is shaped by capitalism that actually wants more labor, a more workforce, and it requires you to be normative or blend
fit
in
the mold,
fit in. Like, that's beneficial for that system to flourish. And I think we recognize that, and then we talk about that. And I also want to underline something when I say capitalism. This is I got some feedback on this, but I mean more like neoliberal capitalism, which means less government regulations and small government concept, because I'm mostly referring to America, and American capitalism is neoliberal capitalism mostly. Like, a lot more free market, a lot more personal ownership. So generally, that's what I'm referring to. Just
that's
for the people
that's
who are
not
listening.
what you're saying to me, in private, but okay, sure, let's say that, right?
I mean, you are a little bit more, I think it's safe to say that you don't like capitalism in general, like any form of capitalism.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of get
and
it.
I'm
but
not saying that
you're
I'm a
also not
communist
too. At the same time,
I just mention that either. Right? Like, first of all, I will
also
not be able to go back to the US ever if I do this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that at all. But to go connect actually both of those topics, like, I think it goes also about the problem with my autism in terms of how I see hierarchy and how I see, justice in general. And I feel like in this society that we're living in, this system was so much oppressive on everything, on people, on women, on people of colors, or people on the other side of the world, and disabled and everything. And it is the creation of everything that was the worst in the past 100 years that, yeah, this is why I don't like this idea of capitalism. Is there good things about it that bring some people and lift people up? Sure. But the way we are today, for me, is still perpetrating this consumerism that we still need to consume, and be just labor. And I think that's what is connected to our conversation, even about like the rise and grind, about authenticity and all things, and how social media influence us. Those are things that are created via capitalism. I don't think Instagram have any benefit into society in general at all. I don't think we connect that much through Instagram. I don't think it just put ourselves closer. And the way we talked about it just disprove that point, even on the other side. Like the way people are toxic and looking at what others are doing, like hiding themselves, like snooping there and there. Like, I don't think there is anything good through that. And those products and those social media networks in some way, they're created only through this idea of capitalism, and especially neoliberal capitalism. Yeah. And since it's about, as you say, ownership, private ownership, that means you don't give a shit about the subtlety
you focus on
of the human
profits.
race.
Yeah, it's the profits. The core idea is how I can make more money.
Yeah. But then that means, you put in place systems that doesn't take care of the uniqueness of everybody.
Because like this is what I perceived at the beginning. Like, since you have capitalism, American neoliberal capitalism, you have this variety of people, like from all over the world. And then the idea of other is not there. Like, they kind of live together, find ways to live together. Because in Turkey, most of the people are like very similar, and there are like these traditions and religious perspective, blah, blah, blah. So you don't really see that to a degree, but not at this point. I don't think that way. I think neoliberal capitalism in America is still sold like, this is how we are making our wealth, and this is how we are the most powerful country in the world, and we are the richest country in the world. But then what they're doing with that money, and then you also look at China, and China is also getting good economy, even though they're like extremely communist.
Yeah, completely different.
But still, like, I think it's nuanced. It's not as simple as saying like you need to have neoliberalism to, have all the best things.
It is something interesting because a lot of people that I'm talking with about capitalism and the system that we're in feels like we live through that, and there's no system that is plausible outside of what we're living today. And I'm not giving any alternative right now, but I'm just saying, like, even as today, like in politics, for example, in France, we had like this election, legislative election. So we changed the parliament because Macron fucked up, and he was like, you know what? I'm dissolving the parliament, and then you're going to go back to vote for the parliament. And what happened is just proves, that society is divided in three parts in France, which is 1/3 racist, 1/3 neoliberal, and 1/3 left, all right, in general.
And left meaning more social democratic.
Social democrat, but also a little bit, sometimes a little bit more leftist than just social, neoliberal, but for sure more social democracy in itself. And the way Macron is talking nowadays, he says, "Oh, you got the far right, bad, but also left is bad too." Like, he fucked up in terms of his presidency, and this is why like he had to call out those elections. And even though he lost because it didn't come first again, he's still going out on TV and talking to people saying, "Oh, there's only one way." Like, those are extremists. There's no other system than the one that we're living in. There's no options. So the only people that you should agree on is us. And that's fucking crazy. And then like, for me, that just represents everything we talked about before. It's mean like, oh, you have to be normal. Like, we are normal. The others are not normal. Fuck them. And it is definitely rooted in this idea of neoliberal capitalism, because people don't like it here. People didn't like every laws that passed for the past 5 years. And that motherfucker, I'm going to say it, I'm sorry guys, but just don't give a shit because he think he's right and people should oblige to his way of thinking. And that's, for me, it's so fucking crazy because we came to this idea of, oh, there's only one system and this system is the only one that is working and is the only one that is the best. But as we can see, guys, there's so much disparities. It is impossible for us to buy properties. We have good wages. Everything is fucked up in our generation regarding our parents in terms of wealth inequality. And they're still arguing that is the best system ever. And that's where I don't fit in that idea at all. and everything that we talked about is fucking crazy for me.
It's just got to a point also that representative democracy in US, there are for some things, but it's just they created so many powerful people from that generation, like older generation, where the wealth go to, and then the new generation is not getting, which is like the problem, the distribution of the wealth. But that group of people got so powerful and so influential also on the government affairs and lawmaking, and there's lobbyists. That's in itself, to me, plutocracy, because these people are influencing the government and how they're making laws. It feels like, how are we going to change this? It's going to take time. I hope a lot more people will talk about it and be aware in the system that they're living in. I feel like there are a lot of people who are kind of seeing how messed up the economy is, but maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know.
I think, yeah, a lot of people feel the way we're living, but I don't think they understand how deeply rooted and how the system works in itself. Yeah, it's not being like a conspi, you know.
Conspi?
Being like a conspi. I'm not a conspirarist.
Conspiti.
But like the idea that we have through this conversation, I think that this is something really important for everybody, because we're talking about authenticity, meaning like to go back to basically who you are, but it's also a reflection about yourself and reflection about everything that surrounds you. And when I'm saying like reflection about that, it's also reflecting everything that it's not judging or it's not like countering the idea of the way you live and society, but it's a reflection about it. Like having to step back and be like, okay, what is wrong? What is right? What is good? What is not good? And how can we maybe change some things? Not like, oh, there's this guy, you know, living in a penthouse that is controlling the world. No, not that shit. You know, but trying to understand how the politics works and how the money works in itself too. And how, you know, it's going from end to end. And the moment you really look at that a little bit closer and then you're like, okay, this is not normal. And as you were saying about lobbyists and things like that, I think it's not normal, you know, having someone that is struggling with 2 jobs and cannot buy ever in their life house and they cannot even pay for their kids' school or meals and things like that. And on the other end, you just completely forget that there's guys that are putting millions of dollars in super PACs for some candidates in the US, and it works also for Europe. Don't get me wrong. And then they're gonna influence because they don't want a law, and so they're not gonna pass that law that's gonna put them in a bad situation as a company. And I'm not saying that we should get rid of everything.
There should be a better way.
Yeah. And maybe, you know? but then that means, you know, it needs to be reflected on ourselves too. It's like why we're participating to something that is not beneficial for us. But is it also beneficial and not beneficial for the people that are struggling or the people that we care? And if it's not, then what would be the best option? And I think it's always that idea again. And to go back to neurodiversity too, this idea of how do we learn about ourselves, understanding that people are different, and how can we live all together at the end of the day?
Yeah, 100%. Like there are so much, like even this whole money machine of America, a lot of the money goes to the military. Like a lot of countries' money goes to their military. Why are we investing so much? Because they're like, they don't want to get into war or protect. We have NATO. Like there are like these strategies so people don't attack each other and kill each other. We have wars in Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine. And that idea of other, like I'm going to live it the way that I want to live. And I don't give a fuck about you. Like that's something that needs to be overcome with. We need to be able to live with others. We need to be able to understand others and where they're coming from without being aggressive or dismissive, who they are authentically, who I am authentically. And once you understand that and you can live with other people, I mean, I wish that would be the goal. And then the economy and the system, political system will be around that. But everybody needs to agree on that, not just intellectually, but emotionally too. They need to feel safe around other.
You need your safe place. But everything should be a safe place for everyone. But yeah, we're joking about that. But I think, you just put everything back together in that sense. Because that's really those ideas that we try to bring in that podcast is we come up with this specific topic for sure. But it's always come back to these ideas, like this reflection of why we're doing that. Why are we participating in this? Why is taking ourselves out of who we are, or we don't want to reflect on ourselves because it's easier? And how can we be more authentic? Because at the end of the day, and I think most of the conclusion that we're doing in these episodes are about how can we be more ourselves in order to be better with others and communicate with others.
Being open-minded.
And through our authentic self, we can connect better with other people. And if people are connected to themselves, then they understand where you're coming from. They don't have to put themselves in your shoes, but they can maybe have this other way of thinking about your actions and who you are.
That's the nature of yes and no. Don't say just yes, don't say just no, just say yes and no and try to maybe there is this thing and then there is this other thing. Yeah. That's yes and no, baby.
Yeah. To go back to the beginning of that conversation, that's also the idea of what we want to do in this next season. We're going to try some new format too. During that break, you will be able to catch us doing those conversations.
Content, yeah.
Exactly. Doing this conversation on Twitch sometimes, so you can participate live, come, have a chat with us, have a conversation. Maybe they're going to be longer, maybe they're going to be shorter. We're going to try our new format more, basically. We're going to try to have more guests.
Like guests.
Maybe we're going to have like recurring guests too. Who knows? You guys will.
What if we get like a famous person? That
maybe
would be
really famous person.
Yeah, like Ricky Martin.
Ricky Martin? Isn't it dead?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, Schwarzy for sure.
Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzy. Yeah. So don't forget to follow us, updated of what we're doing. We're going to try to put different type of content on social media too. So not just recording and small part of those episodes, but more personal stuff too. Hopefully you'll be there.
Yeah, we want to improve, get better content, better topics, maybe more subtle, simple, but just to keep, this thing going. I think we're all right. I think we're good. Yeah. Let's keep doing it. All right.
Thank you guys again. This was the last episode of this first season of Yes and No Podcast. I was one of your hosts, Matt.
And I'm your other host, Arda.
Great for once. And hopefully we'll see you next season in September. We were also the producer of this podcast. We're the social media manager. We are the music composer. We're the editors. We're everything. So please follow us. Yes and No Podcast on social media. You can support us by doing some tips sometimes if you want. We have buy us a coffee online that you can participate. We love to hear your feedback about this first season. And also, if you have topics that you want to mention, we can talk about that maybe too. So thank you again for your support. It was a great experience too. We had a lot of conversation with other people about our conversations. And I really liked that. And as always, bro, thank you. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you, bro. And if anybody listened this for like an hour long, and if you're still here, thank you.
Thank you very much. We love you very much, guys. All right. Thank you. See you next season.
See you next season.